Good morning, everybody. Hope you had a good, wonderful weekend. We certainly did in Minnesota, so hopefully you did too. I talk about this every other week, the 5Q tape breakdown. If you're not doing the 15-minute drill, why aren't you? But if you aren't, at least do the 5Q tape breakdown, only 10 minutes every other week. Learn from other people's mistakes, get better every couple of weeks at least if you're not getting better every day with your 15-minute drill. So Missy was going to talk, you talked here about giving people a wow experience, making people view you very, very favorably, which gives you referrals, retention, brings the children on board so they don't leave, etc. And Missy brought up that she just got back from vacation. And can you talk about that? What happened with you, Missy?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that this was kind of a good opportunity since Mike had just talked about the wow last week, and I just got back from vacation, and I know that we talk about it often that it's the little things, guys, that make a difference. And since we talk about it, I'm looking for these kinds of things. But I just got back from vacation, and this is the welcome board that when we first stepped onto the resort that we stayed at. This is what the welcome board looked like. And our name is right there. And it doesn't matter how excited you are to show up to a place. This started our vacation out on a very different feel because it was homey. It felt like, oh my gosh, look at how much effort they put into welcoming all of us that showed up at the resort that particular day. And so again,
well, can I jump in there? Even and you say all the effort. How much effort did that take?
Yeah, well, and I was just going to circle back and say all the effort is probably 11 minutes, 12 minutes maybe that it took them to write everyone's names. And they did it every day. And some days there was only 4 people on there. So to me, it felt like it was a ton of effort because all week I could see that this board was changing. But really, it's one person that probably spent 10 to, let's even give them 20 minutes writing people's names on there. And it made a huge impact. And now here I am, I'm bringing it back to tell all of you guys about what an impact it made. I've told 3 or 4 other people, like, this was really cool. These guys were really, good at doing the little things to make it a really memorable trip. And so it doesn't take a lot of elbow grease and a lot of time. Putting in the little bit of elbow grease and the little bit of time makes a huge impact. So guys, just, the welcome board that Mike talked about for you guys to do to welcome your clients that we did when we were meeting clients, it's a huge, huge benefit and something that they'll talk about. And I know because I've heard my friends and my families talk about it as well. So take the time and do it, guys. This was made a huge impression to me, and I'm looking for these things. And so when these things happen, and I kind of expect that people would do them because it is the little things. But to me, this set the tone of our whole entire vacation. So I just thought it was good timing.
Can I give you one time when you probably shouldn't do it?
Sure.
Yeah, right down here. If that's what it's going to look like, you probably shouldn't.
But,
you probably shouldn't welcome people.
Yeah.
Other than that, all the rest of these are awesome, but that one probably
shouldn't have been
put on there.
Just a little bit more angled, maybe.
Prominent. Thanks, Missy. Guys, it doesn't take a lot to make impressions of people. But remember what we said: inefficiency. And guys, is this an efficient way or an inefficient way to welcome everybody? The fact that they had to handwrite all of this stuff, that's inefficient. That's like Mitch said, it's warm. So you don't even need to. You can have a chalkboard outside of or a whiteboard outside of your office and just say, handwrite, welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, or Bob and Mary Johnson. It would be that simple. I mean, how easy is it? I can't understand why people wouldn't take that time. So what's happening to life expectancy? Well, look at in 1860, 40 years old. Even back in 1920, less than 60 years old. Even back in the 70s, 7 years old. Look at how, so is this good or bad? Well, it's both. It's great for us as human beings. How is it for our finances? Not so great, or you have to be very careful with that. So this is from the HHC, the Health and Human Services. research, and they determine how many older adults will actually use long-term care services. Because the unfortunate thing is, even though we're living longer, people used to what? When people lived to age 60, did they spend 20 years with diabetes and heart conditions and being 70 pounds overweight and all? Did they just get to 60 and die, drop over dead? So did they spend 20 years with 15 different medications they were taking, or did they get to age 60 and die? Now, I mean, how many people are taking 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pharmaceuticals between age 70 and their time of death? I mean, because the quality of life has, we're living longer, but the quality of life necessarily hasn't gotten better, which means that more older adults will use long-term care services. So this is lifetime earnings. So if you're in the bottom quartile of earnings, you're going to have some level of long-term care need, any duration. So the poorer you are, the more likely you're going to need some sort of care. Now, here's the funny thing: the poorer you are, you're going to need some sort of long-term care, and the richer, the top quintile, the top 20%. So why is it sandwiched here? Why, if you're poor, and why, if you're the wealthiest 20%, the bottom 20%, the top 20%, why are you two significantly going to experience long-term care significantly more often than the people in the middle? Well, we know why they're poor, because probably they can't afford health care, not eating as well, no time to exercise, living maybe in communities that have more pollution and things like that. So we get that. Why is this happening, guys? And this is the people we want to work with, right? The top 20% of the population. Well, it could be. Andre says stress. What else would this be? Because this isn't talking about how long people live. This is talking about the fact that the likelihood they're going to need long-term care services. It's because these people also tend to live longer. Okay? So these people here, I don't know what I'm reading. Boy, so I hope some of you are saying, Mike, you're not reading that chart correctly, because I wasn't reading that chart correctly. So the bottom quintile, they're going to, sorry about that, the bottom 20%, they're going to have a 31% chance of spending 5 or more years, and 65% chance of having some sort of, so sorry about that. This is simply talking about the bottom 20%. Now, we understand why that's the case. Now, let's look at the top 20% of earners. Sorry about that. Boy, I guess I needed to do a little a prep here after a fun weekend. So even though in the top 20%, this is the people we want to work with, the top 20% of income, even them, 55% are going to have some level of long-term care need. 20% of them are going to need 5 years or more. Is that a high percentage? Because this is where, at least in the top 40% of people, this is where we want our clients, right? And it's pretty identical. 20% of them, near 20%, are going to spend 5 years or more. How much money is 5 years or more of long-term care? How much money is 5 years or more of long-term care? Tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands? And how many people in the top 40%, top 20% of income want to end up in a Medicaid facility? Because if you can't afford it, you're going to end up in a Medicaid facility. Is there a difference between Medicaid facility and a nice long-term care facility? They're huge. For those of you that have friends or family, there's a huge difference. Yeah, $500,000 or more if they're in the 2 to 4 years, 16. So then we look at it, it's going to be 20 plus 15 is what? 35. So more than a third are going to spend 2 to 4 years. Even that is what? More than not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. So guys, should we be talking to our clients about these numbers, or should we and we don't, I get it. We don't talk to our clients about these things because it's uncomfortable. How many of your clients think they're going to end up in a long-term care facility? They all don't want to talk about it, but if a third or more are going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on long-term care, is it something that as financial advisors we need to bring up? Now, we do not bring it up when we're bringing a client on. We do, because it is uncomfortable. We don't talk about it with a prospect. But once they're our client and they've hired us to be their advisor, then should we be talking about it? Yes. This is more than a third are going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on long-term care. So they could do long-term care insurance to pay for that. They could liquidate their assets, which you said are going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars, or they could utilize annuities and life insurance. So that's what I want to talk about today. Because if you utilize annuities and life insurance, will that affect their lifestyle? Long-term care insurance, does that affect their lifestyle? Heck yeah. How expensive is long-term care insurance? And do long-term care insurance companies go bust? Heck yeah, they do. So then all the money you paid in goes right down the tube. Liquidating assets, will that affect their lifestyle? If they have to pull out of their assets to cover hundreds of thousands of dollars of cost? Yes. But does utilizing annuities and life insurance, does that affect their lifestyle? And if they don't need the long-term care insurance, do they lose out on anything? No. So 3 in 4 non-qualified annuity owners plan to use their annuities for possible long-term care. So 3 out of 4 are doing it. If the 3 out of 4 are planning to do it, should we make sure they're doing it the most efficient way possible? So the PPA, the Pension Protection Act, allows our clients to use annuities to pay for long-term care expenses. What is the PPA Act of 2006? Well, the Pension Protection Act is a federal law enacted to strengthen private pension plans and enhance retirement savings. It introduced new funding requirements for defined pension plans. So it was generally for that, but there was for pension plans, the 401ks and Roths, but it had other things in there as well. And one of them was using your retirement accounts to pay for long-term care expenses. It allows you to exchange non-qualified annuity with a long-term care insurance policy. So you can change your non-qualified annuity into a long-term care insurance policy or an annuity that has long-term care insurance provisions. So here's a step-by-step roadmap of how you would utilize that. You do a 1035 exchange for a regular annuity. This is another reason, and guys, you're just moving from one annuity to another annuity, one annuity to another annuity. So you use a 1035 to do that, but you're going to use an existing non-qualified annuity to one that's compliant with the PPA Act. This exchange is tax-free, meaning that accumulated earnings of the original annuity will continue to grow tax-deferred. So it's essentially going to continue to grow the same way as possible, but now it has a long-term care rider. So with the rider that's PPA compliant, you must use it for the rider allows the annuity owner to tap into the annuity's death benefit to pay for long-term care expense tax-free as per the PPA. Qualifying for benefits, the annuity owner must be certified as chronically ill, blah, 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 and claiming the benefit as easy as can be. So guys, how many of your annuities are using the long-term care provision? Should they have a long-term care provision? Let's not say how many do. Let's just ask, should all of your annuities have a long-term care provision? Yay or nay? Got everybody saying yes. Yes, they should. Benefits of integrated non-qualified annuities, long-term care insurance. Tax efficient. It enhances the care coverage by redirecting annuity assets towards long-term care insurance. Retirees can secure more comprehensive coverage tailored to their healthcare needs. Preserves income because they're not paying out in long-term care insurance. Flexible allocations and legacy planning. If long-term care needs are minimal, remaining annuity funds are still passed on to the kids. So guys, please, 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 if you've not looked at all of your clients' annuities to make sure they have long-term care insurance riders and are PPA compliant, please do that. And if they're not, please call Jerry, Dan, or your cohorts at ECA to find out how we can help your clients get these benefits. Does that make sense? Because is this a small amount of people or a large amount of people? A third. I mean, if you told your clients you got a 1 in 3 chance of spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, is that something you should talk about or not talk about? Because how many of your clients could afford hundreds of thousands of dollars in healthcare costs? They can't. Make sense? So please, please, please take a look at your clients' annuities, and if they're not PPA compliant or do not have LTC riders, make sure you're talking to ECA about that. So are stocks overvalued? There's lots of different of models to figure out, are they overvalued? So I'm going to look at just 3 of those models here today. So short-term versus long-term return using absolute relative valuation models. So one of the ways you can do it is look at absolute relative valuation models. This is something that a certified financial analyst would do. So it's not something I know how to do, but it's something that I know how to read, as we all can read these charts. So it's looking at short-term, which is 1-year return versus 10 years. So using this model, because there's all sorts of ways to look at the market, right? Is there any one predictor of the market? No. Is there? No, there's not. There's many different ways. So these are 3 of the main ways that CFAs analyze whether the market is overvalued or not. So the absolute value realization model, look at short-term returns. That means you got these are average of dividend yield and earnings yield, subsequent return. So they used dividend and yield and earnings yield to determine whether the market is overvalued or not. So over 1 year, what is it telling us? We could have a high return, or we could have a what? Low return. It's all right in the middle. So, but even at negative returns, so the market valuation is what? We have a high likelihood of negative returns or a low likelihood of negative returns. How about over 10-year time periods? Even over the next 10 years, this is an average of annual return of the next 10 years. Look at how some of these are what? Not a lot, but I'd say like 10% or 5% likelihood of what? Having a negative return over 10 years. And we always tell clients that what? 10 years, you can never lose money over 10 years. Can you lose money over 10 years based on this valuation model? Yes, you can. And look at how many of them are below 5% based on our current valuations. There's an absolute valuation model. Absolute valuation model looks very what? Similar. 1 year possible returns, basically split half and half. And even so, over 10 years, we got what? A very high likelihood of getting less than 5% rate of return on average over the next 10 years. We have even got the likelihoods of having negative returns over the next 10 years. This is the one I love. I love the Cape Shiller. You hear me talk about it all the time. But here's the thing. How similar are these charts? Similar or not similar? So regardless of they're very, very similar. So regardless of how you're evaluating the market is what? Undervalued or overvalued? I look at this and I say it's overvalued. So I bring this up because here in February of this year, Financial Advisor magazine had an article about the fact that the year is living dangerously. Even the entity that we use to help us get people to buy stocks, Financial Advisor magazine, is saying that we are living in a very, very dangerous time right now. So we're anticipating the Federal Reserve to do what? Start lowering rates. What do we find out here over the last month? Is it a guaranteed that the Federal Reserve is going to lower rates? No, because we found out what's happening with inflation. We thought it was tamed, and now what's happening with inflation? Back up. So that's one thing. Federal Reserve will turn away from interest rate hikes. We also investors are largely concerned about other new things like geopolitical problems. Guys, how many geopolitical problems do we have right now? China and Taiwan, Israel and Gaza Strip. Russia and how many other countries is threatening to invade right now besides Ukraine? So do we have geopolitical problems? Do we have problems domestically? We've got all sorts of problems. So the London Conference of Global Investors, they asked the biggest investors in the world, the people who are, quote unquote, the smartest, well-backed, researched, these are the movers and shakers in industry. What are their biggest worries? Number one is geopolitical. Number two is our presidential election. So these are the 2 biggest worries they have. To be honest with you, these are the 2 biggest worries I have. Inflation, yeah, I'm worried about that, but as compared to what can happen here and what can happen here, it's tiny. Over the last 2 years, the U.S. economy has wrestled successfully with inflation, defied a continual stream of recession forecasts. We're going to have a recession, we're going to have a recession, we're going to have a recession. Nope, looks like we had a soft landing. And as soon as they said, looks like we had a soft landing, what happened to inflation? Because earlier this year, they said, yep, the Fed Reserve did it for the first time ever. We officially have a soft landing. As soon as they opened their mouths and said that, they jinxed themselves because now we see inflation ticking up. Few people seem satisfied with the post-COVID-19 recovery. At least, as I showed you here a week or two ago, all the indicators, we're spending more, we're eating out more, we're taking more plane trips, we are out there spending money like you wouldn't believe, and yet when you poll the American public, even though everybody's spending money right and left, they say the economy's not doing very well. And you know what? Here's the thing: is reality or what people perceive more important? Reality or perception? What's more important? Reality is R on your feedback, or P, perception? Which one? R or P? Yeah, P, perception is. There's also a feeling that the current economic strength can't be sustained when the federal government is racking up massive budget deficits approaching $2 trillion. I would agree with that. Eventually, we're going to have to start to do what? Contract that spending. The rest of the world's problems aside, the sun rarely sets on the U.S. stock market. American investors enter 2024 conditioned by 15 years of stunning returns. Beginning with S&P 500 starting at 666 in March 2009, equities goosed forward by easing monetary policy. How long did the Federal Reserve buy bonds? Because of that, we saw a spectacular run-up that propelled the United States out of pandemic economic doldrums faster than other nations. The market's lift also spawned an increase in wealth among the clients of financial advisors. At present, excessive calls for inflation to continue declining. We find out, that's what they thought, but now what do we got happening? For no recession to surface, we don't know what's going to happen there. For earnings to grow at 8 to 10%, and for the Fed to cut interest rates. So guys, if we have tamed inflation, no recession, earnings grow at 8 to 10% a year, and the Fed cuts interest rates, how much money do I want in the market? How many of you would be taking out, if that's what we're going to have, how many of you would be taking out loans on your equity of your house and taking your credit card and running it, taking all the cash out of your credit card and putting it into the market if these were guaranteed to happen? I would. But is there any guarantee we're not going to have inflation? We're not going to have a recession. We're not going to have earnings, that we're going to have earnings growth of 8 to 10%, and that the Fed's going to continue to cut interest rates? We don't know. So global investment strategist at MFS Investment Management said, while it's quite possible that 1, 2, or even 3 of these things might happen, all 4 happening are what? Highly likely or not likely? Yeah, that's a Goldilocks environment, right? So what we said, we haven't had a recession. The Fed up with recession predictions that failed to materialize. Wall Street conventional wisdom has settled on the idea that the economy will enjoy a soft landing. Some, like Charles Schwab, chief investment advisor and economist Ed Yardeni, who I love, he's a really smart dude, have posited that the traditional business cycles have been shifted this time around by a series of rolling recessions as sectors from technology, durable goods, and travel struggle in fits and starts. So he's saying that we had a recession, but because one industry was having a recession, the rest weren't. Then another one, that one would recover, and another one would have a recession. And so they're saying that the recession was hidden. That could very well be. Consumer strength has been fueled by successful fiscal stimulus packages from Trump and Biden administrations. But guys, that's why Trump and Biden both ran up the debt, because how much of the Trump gave us all, people who make a good amount of money, gave us all a tax break that ran up huge amounts of debt. Biden, all of the things he's doing right now is running up huge amounts of debt. How long can they continue to? I mean, how much longer? I don't care if Trump wins or Biden wins. How much longer can they continue to run up that kind of debt? We're already it's busting at the seams with debt. They can't do that. So, consumer strength has been fueled by fiscal stimulus packages. Yardeni has noted that many of a wave of baby boomers recently reaching retirement are now taking their required minimum distributions from fat 401k accounts. This is keeping the economy humming in ways it didn't in the past. Many retirees, these are the good things that they're talking about. Many retirees may be doing fairly well through higher interest rates, inflation, or frustrating younger Americans looking to buy their first homes. still, on the spending front, hourly workers are benefiting from labor shortages, according to Christina Hooper, chief investment strategist for Invesco. These workers can easily pick up extra part-time work, so that they're out there still earning money, and that's why we have unemployment as low as it is. So we have nothing but smooth. I mean, all those things that they're talking here, nothing but smooth sailing ahead. Is that correct? Beneath the surface, all the rosy statistics mask some troubling trends, many of them traced to debt. Are any of us going to argue that debt is not a problem at this point? I don't care if you're pro-Biden, pro-Trump, or hate both of them. Is debt a problem right now? Not only in the government, but personal debt, a problem. There are roughly half as many public companies as there were 2 decades ago. Many went private or merged via extensive financial leverage. From Spirit Airlines, which says it isn't contemplating bankruptcy, but it is, to Sports Illustrated, trucking businesses like 91-year-old Yellow Freight and 8-year-old Convoy, a startup backed by Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, more companies have encountered financial woes, including default, in the last year than most Americans realize. In 2023, the number of companies in the U.S. with $50 million or more in debt that filed for bankruptcy was about 200. Similar to what was happened during the pandemic and in 2008. So guys, how many of you, I didn't realize this, how many of you realized that last year, as many companies filed for bankruptcy as they did in 2008 and during 2021 during the pandemic? How many of you realize that? I didn't know that. And is that a problem? If we've got as many companies filing for bankruptcy now as did in 2008 and did in during the pandemic, is that a problem? Both 2008 and 2020 economies were extraordinary by most measures. Last year differed only in the aggressive Federal Reserve tightening cycle, which many perceived as a return to economic normalcy. But amid the rate increases, most businesses that recently failed collapsed under the weight of their own debt, presumably falling revenue and falling revenues. Given the economy's ability to upset expectations, it's reasonable to ask if major structural changes are taking place. Hey, maybe all those things don't matter anymore. He notes that interest rates have existed for 5,000 years, and yet in the last 50 years, we've never been higher or lower. Guys, look at in the last 5,000 years of interest rates, they've never been higher as they were in the 70s, never been lower as they were in the last few years before the last year or two. So what happens beyond this year in the next decade would be more important for advisors and clients. Yardini research has outlined some basic scenarios after looking in the rearview mirror for 50 to 100 years back to describe the current era. First scenario is called the Roaring Twenties. So we talked about this 2 or 3 weeks ago, right? How closely did the graph for the Roaring Twenties, when we overlaid the Roaring Twenties for 2000 to today, match up? How closely were those? They were very, very similar. That's right. So his premise is that we're in the Roaring Twenties scenario right now, and the graphs laid right out, and that's terrific. While we're in the Roaring Twenties going up, but anytime you have the Roaring Twenties, they're also what? Eventually, it comes to what? Ahead, and it's all given back. And guys, did it go back 50% the Roaring Twenties, or did it go back a heck of a lot more? There's also a 20% chance of a second scenario he dubs as the one in the 1970s. Do you know how bad was the stock market in the 1970s, guys? How bad was the stock, or how good was the stock market in the 1970s? Was it bad or good? Yeah, it was not good at all. So we have a 20% chance of a 1970 scenario compared to the period of the last couple of years when inflation returned. Even though price increases slowed in 2023, there is still a risk of a second inflationary energy shock as occurred in the 1970s. This one, however, will be tied to geopolitical problems, including Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. If the conflicts in the Middle East continue to spin out of control, oil prices could soar again. And that's what Jamie Dimon. Now, I don't know if you think that Jamie Dimon is smart or not smart, but he's saying what? He's saying, yeah, we could have a Goldilocks moment here that lasts for another year or so, but we're going to have to pay the piper with debt. We're going to have to pay the piper with energy use. We're going to have to pay the piper eventually. And he's saying we're much more likely to have a 19. He's the opposite of Yardini. He's saying we got an 80% chance of a 1970 scenario. Read Dahlia's commentary. Are we in a stock market bubble? As you know, I convert my intuitive thinking into indicators I write down as decision rules or principles that can be backed and tested and automated, put together with other principles. That's blah, 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 blah. So we looked at his principles. So a lot of people would ask, well, why would you possibly think we're in a bubble, Mike? Well, let's look at rates turn. 2009, we made how much? The market is up 26, up 15, up 2, up 16, up 32, up 13, flat, up 12, 21, down 4, up 31, up 18, up 28, 28, down 18, up 26. Guys, this is a pretty good or pretty bad 15 years or so, 14 years or so. Good, yeah. Would you say that there's any bubbling going on here? Well, let's look at how Dalio defines bubbling. I define a bubble with if they have following the high degrees. So high prices relative to traditional measures. We just looked at those three charts. Do we have high stock prices as compared to the three traditional methods of looking at value? Yes or no, based on those three charts that we looked at the very beginning of this call? Yeah, so we have extremely high pricing as compared to the three major ways CFAs measure the market valuation. It's extremely high right now. So that's one. So I check off one, we have that. Two, unsustainable conditions, extrapolating past revenue and earnings growth rates in a cycle when capacity limits means that a growth can't be sustained. Guys, is this kind of growth sustainable for the next 14 years? Is this kind of growth sustainable for the next 14 years? Are we going to be able to, are we going to have interest rates at 0% for 5, 6, 7 years like we did in the last 15 years? Are we going to have the U.S. government buying billions and billions and billions of dollars of bonds to add money to the, guys, I would check, I don't know about you guys, I'm checking this off. We have unsustainable conditions. We can't do what we did during these 14 years. How about number three? Many new and naive buyers who are attracted in because the market has gone up a lot, so it's perceived as a hot market. Is everybody talking about the market right now? How many people are sitting on the sideline right now? Broad bullish sentiment. Check off that. How many of your clients are worried right now? And maybe they're worried because you're a smart advisor and telling them, you know what, this is unsustainable. But the general population right now is what? Bullish or bearish? The general population is bullish or bearish right now? They're bullish. A high percentage of purchases being financed by debt. We just got done talking about that. Check off. A lot of foreign speculative purchases being bet on price gains. This one I couldn't tell you. I have no clue. Number 6, but I can tell you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm like, yep. This one I have no clue on. But should we take all of our money out of the market? No, I'm not saying that. But are we near a bubble? Because here's the thing. Does the market have fantastic periods of growth? Yes. And then what does it do after fantastic periods of growth? What does it do after fantastic periods of growth? It does what? It rests. Growth. Rests. Growth. Rests. Growth. Guess what I think we're in? A gray or a purple? Now here's the great thing. During these purple times, what kind of investment is fantastic during these purple times? The stock market? No. What kind of investment is fantastic during the ups and downs of these purple times? Up, down, 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 up. FIAs are fantastic. What kind of investment is okay during the gray times? The market's great, but what's okay? FIAs. Great, okay, great, okay, great, okay, great. Market is terrible. 25 years of flat, terrible, terrible, terrible. Great. Terrible, 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 terrible. 17 years of flat. Great. Terrible, 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 terrible. 11 years of flat. Great. Terrible, 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 terrible. 10 years of flat. Where should your clients be right now, especially with some of the products that are available? Where should they be? Because remember, I'm back to Kitts here. Looking at your clients, where's the likelihood? How much, what percentage, if they want to have the highest likelihood with a 4% withdrawal rate. This is based on a 4% withdrawal rate. They want the highest likelihood of not running out of money. Where should they be? They should have 20, 30, 40% of their money in the market right now. 20, 30, 40% of the market right now. And then over time, they should do what? Every year, add more back into the market. Because you want to start out at 20, 30, 40% now, and by the time 20, 30 years or 30 years are in the future, then you want to switch over to have 60, 70, 80%, 90% of your money in the market. But do you want 90% of your money in the market now, or do you want it that when you're 85? So guys, please, 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 you should be rebalancing your clients' portfolios into FIAs, and then every year you should take the money out of the FIA and do what, guys? Move all of your clients' monies. What I would do is I'd move so they had 70% of their money, only 30% of the money in the market, 70% in FIAs, and then what would I do every year? What would I do with the FIAs every year? I'd take my free withdrawal and do what? Move it back into the market, and then move it back in the market, move it back in the market, move it back in the market. And how would that have benefited people right here? How would that benefit people right here? Guys, remember, our clients are what? Looking to make the most money possible, or making sure they don't move backwards in their lifestyle. So please be going to have these conversations with your clients about annuities with long-term care riders, about moving out of the market into an FIA, because please, 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 guys, how many of your clients should see this chart? How many of your clients should see this chart? How many of your clients would be surprised by this chart? More importantly, when they saw this chart, how many would be alarmed? How many of your clients would say, yeah, this is sustainable. This is generally how the market's going to work. Guys, you are advisors. Advisors are supposed to what? Just do what the client says or advise your clients. Please be advising your clients. Make sense? I'm not going to go through all that. Okay. So we are at, how much time do we have left? Awesome. Plenty of time. So today we're going to be with correlation. We're going to talk about the correlation script, which is the last major script that we have in the presentation. So let's get there, and I'll go to meeting process, 20-point checklist, training video, and we'll go to diversification. Very quickly, is diversification a good thing or a bad thing?
No, it's a good thing.
Good thing. And you've got 11 different funds, so does that seem like you're pretty well diversified? Mm-hmm. Again, this is the template, right? Every concept that we talk about, whether it's risk reward, whether it's a beneficiary, we always tell them the first thing that we talk about in our template is what? They did good. So when it comes to diversification, we say you did well. You did well, you did well. So we always start out with patting them on the back before we have them realize, oh, but they may have done well, but based on what they thought, but when they actually know what they have, they didn't do as well as they thought.
Yeah, you are very well diversified. So, and the reason we like diversification is why? You don't want all your eggs in one basket. You just want to make sure that if anything happens, you're kind of protected that way.
Yeah. So the way that Morningstar measures it is they call it correlation, mm-hmm. which is a correlation matrix. So that's their fancy term for diversification. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense, because if you hear something that has a one... Guys, if we use... How many of your clients know what correlation means? So anytime you use a word, anytime this jargon in our industry, this technical industry, I always downplay and say, that's just a fancy schmancy word for whatever. So it doesn't look like you're lording your knowledge over them. Instead, you're like, yeah, I don't know why these dummies use, why do they use complicated words instead of a word that we all know, which is like diversification. So I always let them know that you think using fancy words is not a very good or productive way to address these issues, okay? One-to-one correlation. Two things have one-to-one correlation. Does it mean they act differently or they act the same?
No, they're the same.
They're the same. And can things affect stocks like oil prices, mm-hmm. interest rates, tariffs we've seen in the news?
Sure.
Can those things affect stocks?
Oh, yeah.
So if it affects, if they have a one-to-one correlation and this one goes down, what will this one do?
It'll go down.
Goes 1. That's a 1-to-1 correlation. Now, what if it had the opposite? What's the opposite of 1?
Negative 1.
Very good. Now, people don't know that. It's negative 1. So if it has a negative 1 correlation, it means that it's going to act the same or the total opposite? Am I explaining correlation to Jeff, or is Jeff explaining correlation to me? Who's explaining correlation? Me, Mike, or Jeff? M or J? Jeff is. That's right, Jeff is. So you ask questions so the client can explain to themselves what correlation means. That means they understand it. That means they're following you. That means they agree with you.
Total opposite.
So if this one goes down, this one would what?
Go up.
Go up. And for diversification, do we want something with a 1-to-1, or do we want one that acts differently if one goes down?
We want them differently.
So do you think we want more of a 1.0 correlation or a negative 1.0 correlation?
Negative 1.
Negative 1. So do you remember back before GPS where they had those maps that where you could see how far it was from, if you're in Ohio, Toledo, Ohio to Akron, Ohio, and you'd go up and over to see what the distance was? Do you remember those?
Yep.
Very good. A lot of people, youngsters don't even know what I'm talking about anymore.
No, I wouldn't even know.
So here's yours.
Okay.
So this is, all your funds are numbered here.
Okay.
So for example, it's saying number 3, which is your index small cap. So we take number 3, and if we want to compare it to what's happening to number 9, we'd go from number 3 down to number 9, and it's saying that it's what?
0.95.
And we said a bad diversification is closer to what?
Closer to 1.
And good diversification is closer to what?
Negative 1.
And you're closer to what?
Oh, that's real close to 1.
And in fact, Morningstar is a very nice thing. They say they color code it. So they're saying anything in this dark color here, or in this dark blue, has a what kind of correlation?
High.
Meaning good is a high in this particular situation, good or bad?
It's bad.
Because it's saying it's diversified or not diversified?
It's not diversified.
And when we look at all of your funds together, what are we saying?
It's not diversified.
It's not diversified. Now you have 11 funds, and you were told you have 11 funds because they're going to help give you what?
Diversification.
And do you have diversification?
No.
Are they all acting identically?
Yep.
So why would somebody have us in 11 things? So again, guys, we're going to get into what? There's no sense finding out he's not diversified. That's not what the purpose of the script is. The purpose of the script is not to have him say, oh, I'm not as diversified as I thought. The purpose of the script is to ask, why then did your guy put you in 11 funds? Does it help him or does it help you? What was his motive to put you in 11 funds if they're not diversified? Without doing that motive, you've wasted your time. Instead of just one thing, if they're all doing the same thing. Can I ask you a question? If you only had one investment, is that simple or complex?
That's pretty simple.
So would you need anybody to help you with something simple?
No, not that simple. No.
So if they're all acting the same, basically the same investment, why does he have you in 11 instead of 1? Does 11 seem a little more complex than 1?
It would seem so, yeah.
Yeah. So why did he have you in 11 instead of 1 when it's just as simple to have 1 if that's the diversification?
Well,
now, do we want this diversification?
We would like. We don't want this.
We don't want this one. We want it truly to be what?
True diversification.
But if you're not going to diversify, then you might as well be in what?
Just the 1.
And why do you think that he wouldn't want you to know that you could be in 1 with the same amount of diversification instead of 11?
Because he wants you to buy 11 things instead of 1.
Yeah, and is that complex or seem more complex?
Yeah.
So who might you need then?
Well, then we might think we need him.
Because if you only had one thing to watch, would you need him?
No.
So why do you have 11, if they're all acting the same, why do you have 11 things instead of one thing?
So we can make more sales and make us think we need him.
Yeah. So the last thing we want to talk about, we've been at it a long time, is long-term. So guys, and I also use a little story here. I say we don't want all of our eggs in one basket, right? Why don't we want all of our eggs in one basket? Because if we drop that basket, it's going to break all the eggs. So I say, okay, well, let's then what if I'm driving a truck down the road and I have 15 baskets, because we don't want all of our eggs in one basket. So we put 15 baskets in the back of the truck and I hit a pothole. What's going to happen to all 15 baskets, all 15 eggs? So I have a separate basket, 15 separate baskets in the back of the truck, and I hit a pothole. What's going to happen to those? Yeah, they're all going to crack. So if I given a choice, would I have 15 baskets in the back of my pickup, or would I rather have one basket in the pickup on my lap, so that when I hit the pothole, I've got I can pick up that basket and not get crack all the eggs. So given a choice, would I rather have 15 baskets in the back of the pickup or all of my eggs in one basket on my lap? Which one if I didn't want broken eggs, which one would I most likely like or have? Let me ask you a question. How about if you think about it with eggs, if you have 15 drinks that you picked up from the local Chick-fil-A, are you going to put those on the seat of your brand new leather car? No. Where are you going to put it? I'm going to put it on my lap so I can what? Protect them from spilling all over the place, right? So how many people are going to disagree with that analogy? And essentially, what am I proposing there when I say put it on my lap? All your eggs in one basket, but you protect them from breaking. What am I proposing? What investment am I proposing there? Without ever mentioning the investment. And FIA, exactly right. So does that make sense? So that's the last thing that we cover in the 21-point checklist. And then next week, we're going to do just the review and we're going to actually cover the objection and the review next week that we sometimes get. So please, these scripts, remember, we're at the end of the main scripts. We're at the end of the 21 points. How many times did I tell Jeff how many statements, because we actually counted, I actually do about 300 questions in this, in all of the, you don't need to, you do not need to, but I ask about 300 questions. How many statements, if we went through this an hour and a half, how many statements do I make? Virtually none. Because see, anything you say, they're not going to believe. Why won't people believe what you say? Why will people not believe what you're going to say? And that's where advisors get confused. They think, well, I'm not lying to them. They're going to trust me. And clients don't call you liars, but they think you're a liar. Why do they think you're a liar? Why? Okay, let me give you an analogy of this. Let's say that I go to a ER because I've cut my hand, deep cut. I go to the ER, and the ER says, okay, we're going to sew this up, and you need to get this tetanus shot. Am I going to argue with him? Well, how much do you make on that tetanus shot? Why are you saying I need it? Am I going to argue with him? Does that emergency surgeon or doctor make more money or less money if I take or do not take that tetanus shot? No. If I refuse to do the tetanus shot, he's going to shrug his shoulders and say, okay, don't get a tetanus shot. See ya. Hope you don't get tetanus. Does he have any vested interest in me following through on his recommendations? No. But when you go to the chiropractor and he wants to give you an x-ray, and then he wants you to get on all these supplements, and he wants you to come back for a 15 sessions with him, do you just say, okay, well, let's do that then? I'm gonna sign into this $2,500 cost. Do you do that? No. Why? Does he have a vested interest in you getting the x-ray and buying all the pharmaceuticals and coming back 15 times? Does he have? Or if you go to a skin doctor, not for sun cancer, but for, you want your skin to look better. And they want to sell you a package of 5. I gave it away. They gave it away there. Sell. So if I'm at a doctor and he could care less whether he makes no more money whether I follow through or not, am I suspicious at all? No. But if I go to a doctor, whether it's a chiropractor, a skin doctor, or a cosmetic surgeon or whoever, and they're trying to tell me that I need elective surgery, and if I don't do it, they won't make money, and if I do it, they will make money, am I more suspicious of what that doctor says? So the reason they don't believe us is what? If they follow through with our suggestions, do we get paid? If they follow through with our suggestions, do we get paid? Yes, we do. So anything we say is always going to be taken with a grain of salt, that the reason he's telling me this is because he wants to get paid. The reason he's saying my investments suck is because he wants me to move my investments to him so he can get paid. The reason he's saying that I have too much risk for reward is he wants me to move the investment so he can get paid. The reason he's saying my beneficiaries aren't right is because he wants to move the investment so he can get paid. See, if I tell him all the 21 things, if I tell him all 21 things, if I go through and say, look it, where's the 21-point checklist? Come here. Oh, look at your will needs to be updated. Your trust, you need to get a trust. Your power of attorney doesn't work with Social Security. Your medical power of attorney needs to be filed electronic. If I go tell them all these things, guess what you have? Nothing, because they think the only reason Mike's telling me these things is what? So I move the investments and he'll get paid. So they have to tell me this. 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 This. And that's where the scripts come in handy, where it's hard for you guys on the fly to come up with a whole bunch of questions and have the client tell you what they need to tell you. I put that together 23, 4, 5 years ago, and it works just as well today as it did 24 years ago. The client will tell you everything. Well, I'm sorry, the client will tell you and themselves everything they need to know about their current relationship, that current relationship cannot be trusted. They need to get out of that current relationship because that person is taking advantage of them, is putting them in the total opposite of what they want and charging them higher for it. They need to move. So guys, please learn these scripts, because they don't believe what you say. Because in reality, I could cover these things in 20 minutes with a client. That'll get you nothing. The reason it takes an hour and a half, 2 hours is the client has to cover these things with me. Make sense? Awesome possum. Well, you guys have a fantastic rest of the week, and we will talk to you all next Monday. Thanks, everybody.